Good morning. This is the Keeping It Real Sunday School class from Cornerstone Baptist Church in Richland, Missouri. I'm Dr. Max Thornsberry, and I'm the teacher, and my wife Brenda will be reading the scriptures this morning out of the Authorized Version, the original King James Version of the Bible. We're continuing our study this week on the subject of Jacob and Esau. And I wanted to give you just a few verses out of, we're going to be looking at Genesis 27, but we haven't really dealt with the encounter that Jacob had with Isaac when he tricked him. It's a pretty significant trickery, I can tell you that. I'll give you just a little breakdown. Isaac says, is this my son Esau? And Jacob said, oh, yes, yes. And he says, it sounds like Jacob. He said, oh, feel my hands here. Okay. And Rebekah had him dress up in Esau's clothes, so Isaac can't see very well. So it's Esau. Mm-hmm. Deception after deception after deception. And immediately after he's given the blessing to Jacob, Jacob leaves and Esau comes in. Esau finds out what Jacob has done. Isaac gives Esau a blessing, but in that blessing you shall be subject to your brother. Esau says, I'm going to kill him. Rebekah hears him say that, and so Rebekah sends him out of the country and gets away. That's the last time we think there was ever any interaction between Jacob and Rebekah. When she made this decision to make sure that God's plan took effect, basically that was the end of her relationship with Isaac and also with Jacob. Jacob goes off to his relatives, actually Rebekah's relatives and Abraham's relatives. He ends up in Laban's house. He gets in a trickery by Laban and has to marry Leah, and then 7 years later he finally gets to marry Rachel. And then in order to get out of there, Laban was just using him as a slave. And while this is all happening, Jacob is accumulating livestock till he's literally wealthy with livestock. And he escapes, takes off. And Laban runs him down, and they have this encounter, and Laban finally turns him loose, and he's able to return. Well, after he has returned, he becomes one of the wealthiest men in the Middle East. Camels, donkeys, horses, goats, sheep, cattle. This then starts our encounter here between Esau and Jacob. We're going to look at Genesis 27, Brandon. I want you to read 35 through 37 and then drop down to 41.
And he said, Thy brother came with subtlety, and hath taken away thy blessing. And he said, Is not he rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he hath taken away my blessing. And he said, Hast thou not reserved a blessing for me? And Isaac answered and said unto Esau, Behold, I have made him thy lord, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants, and with grain and wine have I sustained him. And what shall I do now unto thee, my son? And then down to 41.
He's going to give Esau a blessing, but it's not the blessing.
Yeah. 41 through what?
Just 41.
And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then I will slay my brother Jacob. So
what Esau is saying, as soon as Dad dies, I'm going to kill him. Isaac had told both of these sons that I don't want you marrying Canaanite women. So Esau went off and married an Ishmaelite woman, married his brother's daughter. And of course Jacob went to Laban, and we have the story of Leah and Rachel. Couple of things I want to point out. Esau says, is he not rightly named Jacob? So what's Jacob mean? Jacob has dual meaning. It means a perfect man, a man after God, a man that takes care of his family, but it also means a man that is a cheater or a supplanter. And that's the exact word that Esau uses here, isn't it? He hath supplanted me. What does that term supplanted mean? If you think about that.
Replaced.
Yeah, it means replaced. That's what it means, literally. It means Jacob has replaced Esau as the oldest son, the son of promise, the one that God is going to bless, the one that God is going to change the name to Israel. Now, I'm going to go through quite a little bit of time span here, Brenda, that we're going to cover. I've told you about Jacob going and Laban using him as a slave, and finally marrying Leah and Rachel. From Leah and Rachel and two other women that were his concubines, the Bible calls them concubines and then it calls them wives, he's going to have 12 sons. We don't even know how many daughters he had. The daughters don't get mentioned, other than we are going to have a horrible story about his daughter Diana. Do you remember that story, Brenda?
No, I
well, there was a local king's son there that saw Diana and loved her, and he took her in his house and he raped her. And then he sent to the 12 brothers to Jacob and said, I want to marry your daughter. So they go into their camp and they say, well, that'll be just fine, but to marry one of our sisters, you have to be circumcised. So the king and his son and all the men got circumcised, and when they were laid up from that surgery, Judah come in there with his brothers and killed them all.
Mm-hmm.
And Jacob says, you're going to make me stink in my own country. And Judah says, what we were to do? Does our sister have no honor?
Yeah.
That's a mean story.
That's a really bad story. That's worse than a modern day soap opera.
Yeah, that's a mean story. But it's what happens. The Bible does not pull any punches here. Before all this happens, Jacob has had a transformation in his life, Brenda. Before what we're going to get to here in just a minute. Jacob has seen the angel's ladder, Jacob's ladder, angels coming and going from heaven. A portal there between heaven and earth that exists in the Holy Land. We think it exists right there in Jerusalem on the same area. Yes, I forgot my microphone, didn't I? You did too. Hope this phone picks this up. Do you want to start over? No? Okay. Hope everybody can hear. And it's also a time when Jacob wrestles with a pre-incarnate Jesus. And at that time, his name has been changed to Israel by God himself. And he wrestles with Jesus. And eventually he won't let Jesus go until he blesses him. And Jesus blesses him. And then he touches his hip and he's lame, halt in the hip. Means he had a limp the rest of his life. Which identified that he had had this event with Christ. That has established in the Jewish nation, as I've explained before, this concept of kosher meat, which is set up in the law. There's no prohibition in the law from eating the lower half of the carcass, meaning from mid-rib cage down. But because Jacob was touched in the hip by Christ and was halt, they don't eat anything below mid-carcass. So they don't eat T-bones, they don't eat sirloins, they don't eat rounds. Everything is all upper carcass. So when you buy kosher hot dogs or anything kosher, it's all the upper part of the carcass, the chuck, the round, the brisket. They get some ribeyes, but they don't get any T-bone steak.
Well,
that's awful.
More for us Christians?
I guess that's awful. All right, we're going to jump ahead here, Brenda, and I think we're going to go to chapter 33. And we're going to read verses 1 through 3. Jacob has encountered the Lord. He's had a transformation in his life. He is one of the wealthiest men in the Middle East. He has decided that he wants to reconcile with Esau. And so he begins the process. One of the processes that he sent many, many gifts to Esau. Lots of cattle, lots of things that he had. And we'll start here in chapter 33.
And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau came, and with him 400 men. And he divided the children unto Leah, and unto Rachel, and unto the 2 handmaids. And he put the handmaids and their children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. And he passed over before them, and bowed himself to the ground 7 times, until he came near to his brother.
And 4.
And Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept.
This is not, I don't understand this whole process really, because the Edomites, the descendants of Esau, became the long-term enemy of Israel. And I mean major. He has not had Benjamin yet with Rachel. He has had Joseph. He puts these people behind in different groups, and he puts Rachel, the wife he really loved, and Joseph farthest back, hoping to protect them. Now, Jacob's not going there with just himself, Brenda. He has a whole army of his own. Esau may have come with 400 men. The Bible doesn't even mention how many that Jacob had, but he may have had 3,000. He's the wealthiest man in the Middle East, basically, at this time. I think Esau looks out there and he sees this vast group of people with Jacob, all of these livestock, these wives, 11 sons at this point in time, all the wealth available to him and the blessings that God has given him. I think Esau and his 400 men said, you know, we ought to maybe reconsider here what we might have had planned.
Could be.
Could be we need to reconsider. Now, there's a couple of things here that show that both were attempting. What did Jacob do? He went up and bowed 7 times. He has come with humility. He has come in reality. He has come offering many things, gifts, food, all kinds of things that he has sent to Esau. Esau's going to refuse them. And then Jacob is saying, God has blessed me massively. I want you to take him. And Esau finally does take him. And then he goes back to Seir, mountain country there, where they're going to operate out of. They're going to come against the Israelites. They're going to raid Israel after the Babylonian captivity, the last one. King Herod is an Edomite. He's going to try to kill baby Jesus by killing all the children under 3 or 4 years of age in Bethlehem, the male children. This is not going to turn out well. Not going to turn out well. But evidently, a reconciliation took place between Jacob and Esau. At least it appears this way. I don't know how. I don't trust Esau. Okay? I don't trust him at all. I don't trust his motives. I don't trust what he had planned. I think Esau looked out there and said, we better reconsider. And so I don't know if he's playing the part, if he really means it. There's some indication that he sure played the part, because they come and he kissed his neck and he wept, and they, you know, my brother, well, Esau has lost a lot here. It sure doesn't show up in his lineage and in his nation any regard at all for Jacob and his people. Period. So, I don't know how I view this. I really don't. Let's read 33, 8 through 11, please.
And he said, What meanest thou by all this drove which I met? And he said, These are to find grace in the sight of my Lord. And Esau said, I have enough, my brother, keep what thou hast unto thyself. And Jacob said, Nay, I pray thee, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand. For therefore I have seen thy face, as though I had seen the face of God, and thou wast pleased with me. Take, I pray thee, my blessing that is brought to thee, because God hath dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. And he urged him, and he took it.
I don't know, Brenda. I am reminded of when Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, tried to be nice with the king of Israel, the 10 tribes that had rebelled, and Ahab, and they got together and they had a big meal, and so they went out in battle, and they appeared to be just, you know, working together. And what happens? Ahab draws back. He tells his men, draw back so Jehoshaphat will be killed, and Jehoshaphat pleads with God, and God saves him. You cannot make alliances with an enemy. There is a point where you have to use your head. You have to know your enemies. And I don't know about all this. I read this all last night again, and you know, this lesson's supposed to be about reconciling with your enemy. I don't necessarily want to reconcile with my enemies if I have enemies. I don't want to reconcile with the Democrat Party. I don't want to reconcile with those that that seek abortion up to the time of birth. I don't want to reconcile with those that are pushing Amendment 3 on the state of Missouri to allow you. Now they're going all these commercials like you just have to do it. It's just the right thing to do to let a woman kill her own child. And we just go on layer after layer deep, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that I hate them or I try to destroy them, but it also doesn't mean that I open myself up to them. They're enemies. They are armies of Satan. They are armies of Satan. They are liars, and the truth is not in them. Their purpose is totally different than a biblical purpose. And Esau's purpose is totally different than a biblical purpose. Was Jacob's whole purpose is biblical. He is the son of Isaac, the son of promise. He is going to be the foundation of the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph, his son, is going to be in Egypt and save the nation. He's going to become second in command of all of Egypt. I don't know. I have very mixed feelings about this. People want to reconcile with an enemy. Well, you can't see what's in an enemy's heart. You can see their actions, can you not? Mm-hmm. And it's just like when Jehoshaphat tries to go up there and have this alliance with the king of Israel, and Israel draws back, try to get him killed. You know, they can put on quite a show for you. And I'm not so sure Esau's not doing this very thing. Particularly when you look at what happens later. And when you get into Ezekiel, God has judged the land of Seir, S-E-I-R, which is the land of the Edomites. He's going to destroy them off the face of the earth. That's what happens to Esau and his descendants. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know how to end this lesson. I don't want to reconcile with enemies. I don't want to reconcile with people that are following Satan. I don't want to reconcile with liars when the truth is not in them. I don't want to reconcile with people that are wanting to get us to put in the Constitution of the state of Missouri right to kill your baby up to the day it's born. And then maybe for a few days after. Yeah. I don't want to reconcile with those people. I want to stand solid in my biblical belief. I want to stand solid in what Christ has told me to do and what the Word of God asks me to do.
Well, the only way to really reconcile would be if they came to understand what they were doing and repented of what they were doing. I understand what you mean.
They worship a culture of death.
I don't disagree.
They literally worship it.
I don't disagree.
They asked Waltz here the other day about why they were supporting abortion. He said, we want Roe versus Wade back. We want the mother to make the decision. And they say up to the day of birth, it's her decision.
Yeah, well, that's evil. I'm
so,
sorry.
I don't know. I'm not going to reconcile with those people.
No, you cannot.
I'm not going to stand with them. I'm not going to associate with them. I'm not going to be friends to them. I'll be civil, but I am not going to compromise my position in order to appear like I should be reconciled. Here's the circumstance. Jacob, although he did this through trickery, and although Rebekah sacrificed herself to accomplish this, this was God's plan. Mm-hmm. This is what God intended to happen. It was not to go to Esau. It was to go to Jacob. However that was accomplished, God accomplished it. Mm-hmm. Jacob is Israel.
Yes.
Not Esau. And so Jacob came. I think he really wanted to reconcile. I think he really had humility. I think he demonstrated godly principles. But I'm going to tell you, you cannot make alliances with your enemy.
No.
You cannot do it. King Jehoshaphat proved that quite properly. And had God not delivered him, he would have been killed. So, lesson writer says, do what you can to reconcile. And I guess that's just what I'll do. I'll just do what I can.
Do what you can. And don't do what you can't.
Yeah. Don't do what you can. Don't give up biblical principles to reconcile. Don't take a different stand to compromise the principles of the Word to reconcile. There comes a time, like it says in Ecclesiastes, there is a time for war. There is a time for things in life. You have to recognize that and have enough maturity in Christ to know Christ loves everyone. But when Christ returns, Brenda, those that have gathered with Satan, that Armageddon, A huge army of humans, Gog and Magog, coming from all over the world to destroy Israel. Do you know what he does?
Destroys them.
He speaks the word out of his mouth, and the armies dissolve asunder, and the beasts of the field and the birds of the air feast on their bodies. Christ is not a pacifist. Christ is going to accomplish what God has said is going to occur, and that's the establishment of his kingdom, where he sits on the throne of David for 1,000 years in Jerusalem, and it's going to be accomplished by whatever means he chooses. See you next week.